Well, hello everyone and welcome to Race Week, where today we have the Road to F1 review, where we will be reviewing the Formula 2 races that took place at the Russian Grand Prix this weekend. And before we go into the race reviews, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. The site should be up probably in the next couple of days, to be honest. And hopefully it will be a complete site. And whilst we're waiting for that, make sure you follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/raceweek_show. And along with the site, there'll be a Facebook page that will be launched for Race Week as well. So, without further ado, let's go in to the report. Let's review the Formula 2 races from Sochi. So the first Formula 2 race of the weekend was the feature race, and the race got underway, and Mick Schumacher made his trademark good start, managing to split the Primas going into the first corner. Whilst there was drama behind, it wasn't quite clear what happened going into the first corner, but it appeared that there was initial bit of contact between Yuri Vips and Pedro Piquet, which collected a few other cars, and that included the ART of Christian Lundgaard in the end, and that took him out of the race, which was not good for his championship chances. There was at least 4 or 5 cars taken out. Felipe Drugovich and Roy Nissany, I believe, also had to retire as a result of the contact. And the safety car did come out, but on the restart, it was Yuki Tsunoda leading the way from Schumacher, Daruvala, Aylot, and then it was Aitken. Whilst here you had a battle between Nikita Mazepin and Guan Yu Zhou, Robert Schwartzman was struggling in that DRS train. He'd actually got a really good start and got alongside Aylot going into the first corner, but that did not have the advantage of that slipstream, and like all the cars around him, and that was always going to lose him ground going into the second corner. Whilst everyone pitted in, it was Jehan Daruvala was the first to roll the dice, and then everyone else came in. Whilst you had a battle between Mazepin and Aitken here, or one of the high-techs, and then everyone came in. Yuki Tsunoda pitted, and so did Mick Schumacher. But there was a bit of controversy over Mick Schumacher's pit stop, because he was called in very last minute, and that came to the detriment of his teammate Robert Schwartzman. And that really cost Schwartzman dearly in the end. Whilst Guan Yu Zhou was on the alternate strategy, as you can see here, he is managing to get past Jack Aitken, who was also on the alternate strategy. But Aitken managed to get back through, and then that opened the door for Nikita Mazepin to get through. And then came the battle for the lead of the race. You had Mick Schumacher, who'd conserved his tyres better than Yuki Tsunoda, and eventually he managed to get the run and managed to get a good switchback and get ahead of the Carlin. He was quickly followed through by Callum Aylott, but eventually Yuki managed to get that position back in the end, and Aylott was really struggling for pace towards the end with his tyres and was almost passed by Luca Giotto, but he just beat him to the line. But it was Mick Schumacher who took another feature race victory. He took the victory ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in second place. Callum Aylott just managed to defend the final podium position in third. And then you had Luca Giotto in fourth. Jehan Daruvala finished in fifth, ahead of Jack Aitken in sixth. Nikita Mazepin in seventh. Guan Yu Zhou had reverse grid pole in the Virtuosi, ahead of Marcus Armstrong and Dan Ticktum. As I mentioned, Robert Schwartzman was very unlucky in this race. He missed out on the slipstream, was stuck in a DRS train, and then fell victim to a double stack, where Robert was supposed to come in the lap that Mick came in. Then Mick was called in last minute. Robert had already committed to pitting, and due to a mistake, he lost a lot of time, and he was in the clutches of all the cars that were on the alternate strategy, and he dropped out of the points as a result. there was quite a bit of controversy about that. There was also a protest because René Rossin, the team principal of Prima, could be heard communicating to the team about that last-minute decision to bring Mick in, which is not allowed. Communication between the engineers and the 12 engineers and other people are not allowed. He was initially cleared, but there was 4 teams that protested it, and clearly the person that suffered the most from that was Robert Schwartzman. On the other hand, Jake Hughes had a really good debut in Formula 2, finishing in 12th, which was a considerable effort in the HWA. Then you had Marino Sato, Giuliano Alesi in his first race for MP, Artem Markov, Guilherme Samaya. The 2 Charus of Pedro Piquet and Louis Delatrez were involved in that first corner skirmish. And then Nissany, Drugovic, Lundgaard and Vips were all taken out at the first corner. So, that going into the sprint race, it was Guan Yu Zhu who had reverse grid pole ahead of Mazepin, Aitken, Daruvala, Giotto, Eilert, Tsunoda and Schumacher. So, let's review race 2. That's not F3, it's F2. The sprint race got underway with Guan Yu Zhu in the lead, and something seems to have gone a bit wrong here, considering that auto slideshow is not supposed to happen. Hang on a second. But it was Guan Yu Zhu who had reverse grid pole, and he held the lead, but Nikita Mazepin got a very good start, managing to get ahead of Jack Aitken in the end to take second place and quickly set about catching the virtuosi of Guan Yu Zhu. And then Jack Aitken appeared to be... There was an incident at the first corner which took out both Samaya and, unfortunately, Jake Hughes, which briefly brought out the virtual safety car. But then the virtual safety car came in and Mick Schumacher took full advantage, managing to get past Guilherme Samaya to take third place. Guan Yu Zhu was leading, but Nikita Mazepin was keeping him honest. But Guan Yu Zhu was doing a really good job to make sure that Mazepin wasn't getting a run. And Jack Aitken was dropping down the order and then went into a battle with Luca Giotto for 5th place. But then going on the exit of turn 1, Giotto made a brief bit of contact with Aitken, apparently, which caused Aitken to lose pressure in his right rear tyre. And then going into turn 3, they were side by side, and he slid straight into Giotto at high speed, and then both went into the barriers heavily. And it was one of those hold your breath moments. It was a horrific impact, where one of those instant hold your breath moments. But then the relief came when Luca Giotto climbed out of what was left of his high-tech car. In fact, not just climbed out of the high-tech, but climbed out of the barriers as well. And Jack Aitken also climbed out of his Campos car, which wasn't as badly damaged, but still, he had a very big impact. Both drivers were okay, and that was really good to see. The same could not be said for the cars or the barriers, and because of that, and because of the fact that they were time limited as a result of being a support race to the F1, with the F1 needing to be on schedule, that meant that the race was not restarted in the end, and the race result was called from the lap before the crash happened, from countback. So looking at the result, it was Guan Yu Zhu who finally took his first Formula 2 win, albeit not in the way that he would have wanted to. I'm pretty sure he would have preferred to win a full sprint race. Nikita Mazepin finished in second to ensure that the Russian fans that were there had something to smile about in Formula 2 after a bad day for weekend for Robert Schwartzman. Then you had Mick Schumacher taking another podium in third, ahead of Jack Aitken and Luca Chiotto, who was still classified as a result of the countback. Yuki Tsunoda finished in sixth, ahead of Callum Aylott, who had contact at the first corner and appeared to lack pace. Dan Tickton was in eighth, ahead of Pedro Piquet and Robert Schwartzman, who was poised to take advantage to make his way through the field, but the red flag prevented that. Jehan Daruvla did finish in the points, but he had a 5-second time penalty, which dropped him into 11th. Then he had Artem Markov, Christian Lundgaard, Marcus Armstrong, Marino Sato, Giuliano Alesi, Louis Delattrez, Juri Vips, Roy Nissany, and Felipe Drugovich, with Jake Hughes and Guilherme Samaya as the only classified retirements. So, now taking a look at the drivers' standings leaving this race. And I think it can be safely said that Mick Schumacher is now the title favourite. He now has a massive gap in the drivers' standings. He has a 22-point gap, with his consistency is showing that it only could get bigger. That could only get bigger. He's finished no lower than 6th since the second race at the 70th anniversary race. A top 6 streak, and he's only had one retirement in the Styrian race. Callum Aylott is in second, 22 points behind, ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, who's moved up to third as a result of a good weekend for him. And I believe third would be crucial for him, because I believe that will be enough to get him the super license points needed to graduate to Formula 1. Christian Lundgaard was lucky to defend fourth after a bad weekend, and it was a horrific weekend for Robert Schwartzman. I mentioned it earlier, but I think it can be said his title chances are now starting to slip away. He's 51 points behind now after a bad run. He's 51 points behind, and I think he's now probably going to be thinking that that his title chances are quite small, and that it's just not going to happen this season. I think his aim is just going to be to get a respectable placing to ensure that he is still ready to graduate to Formula 1 next year, because there are rumours of him potentially going to Haas. But I think he's 51 points behind. But the good thing for him is he's got 2 months to rejuvenate himself and work out what he's done wrong. Then you have Nikita Mazepin, who is level on points with Robert Schwartzman in 6th. Then you have Louis Delattrez in 7th, who's been once again had a very consistent season. Guan Yu Zhou, he's been very unlucky this year. Although he took his maiden win on Sunday, still there was bad luck, in the sense that the one time he's leading and he looks on course to take his first win, then there's a red flag. He still gets it, but he only gets 7.5 points for it, which barely does anything to his championship. Luca Chiotto is still in 9th, with Dan Tickton rounding out the top 10. Then you have Drugovich, Aitken, Matsushita, Armstrong, Daruvula, Vips, Alesi, Markelov, Nissany, Galeo, Piquet, Sato, Hughes, and Samaya. So that is it from the Road to F1 review. In fact, this will actually be the last Road to F1 review until Bahrain, when Formula 2 returns. But it looks like Mick Schumacher looks on course to win the 2020 Formula 2 season, and surely looks like an odds-on favourite for a seat in Formula 1 next year. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on Thursday for the midweek recap. Goodbye.